This happened a few nights ago. I was leading my squad on a night patrol at an old military base. The air was cold, and thick fog hugged the ground. It felt heavy there, like the place was hiding something. I had been on many night patrols, but this one was different. Maybe it was the rusted tanks or broken barricades around us. It made me uneasy. Around 2 a.m., we moved out. The fog wrapped around us as we navigated the debris. Everything was quiet. I could only hear water dripping from the eaves above. I tried to shake off the creeping tension. I wanted my squad to stay sharp. Then, a sound broke the silence. A high-pitched whistling echoed through the fog. It sent a chill down my spine. I looked at my men. Their faces showed confusion and worry. I thought it might be the wind or maybe a wild animal. "Stay focused, men," I said, trying to sound calm. But inside, I felt that twinge of fear. As we pushed deeper, the whistling got louder. It felt wrong, almost like it was trying to speak to us. My heart raced. I glanced over my shoulder. My squad looked tense, eyes darting around. I wouldn't admit it to them, but I felt like we were being watched. I tried to raise our communication devices, but all I got was static. I opened my mouth to reassure my men, but the words wouldn't come. That's when Corporal Simmons whispered, "I think I saw something." I turned to look, but all I saw was fog. Another member of my squad said he felt dizzy. Someone else said we were going in circles. My heart raced even more. "Calm down," I said, though my own voice shook. I wanted to turn back, but we needed to get our bearings. I was sure it was the right move. Just then, I caught a shadow moving from the corner of my eye. It darted away as quick as it appeared. I pointed, but it was gone. No one else saw it. I felt a wave of panic. I took a step back, trying to catch my breath. I knew we weren't alone. The whistling soared to a painful pitch. I could feel it vibrating in my bones. I thought about turning back. A part of me wanted to run. But I needed answers. Then came the silence. It hung heavy in the air, mocking our fear. My heart pounded as I wondered what was in the fog. I scanned the area, straining to see through the mist. "Lieutenant," one of my men said. I turned to look at him. His face paled in the dim light. "What do we do?" I didn't know. The fog seemed to swirl around us, thickening. I felt the weight of dread settling deep in my stomach. Something was coming. I could feel it. Then, without warning, the whistling stopped. The fog seemed to close in around us. I held my breath, waiting. What was out there? I strained to listen, my heart pounding in the sudden stillness. A heavy silence replaced the whistling, and it felt like the fog was holding its breath alongside us. I took a tentative step forward, the sounds of my squad's footsteps crunching on gravel echoed unnaturally loud in the void. "Lieutenant, do you want us to move back?" asked Private Fisher, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked around. Everyone seemed on edge, their faces drawn and tense. I hesitated, weighing my options. We could either turn back, or we could press on. But pressing on felt like walking into a trap. "No, keep moving. Just, stay close," I responded, my voice steadier than I felt. That as we advanced, I felt that same sensation from earlier, the feeling of being watched. I stopped to scan our surroundings again. I noticed something odd in the shadows. Just past an overturned jeep was a flicker of movement. Or maybe I imagined it. I squinted into the mist but saw nothing. Did anyone else see that? I asked, more to break the silence than to seek confirmation. "See what?" Corporal Simmons said, tensing in readiness. "Forget it. Let us keep moving." The fog swallowed my words, and I felt the edges of my clarity fading. It was like I was walking in a dream where the boundaries of reality blurred. We moved toward the main building of the base, the silhouette barely discernible through the mist. As we approached, the air seemed to thicken, the structure looming like a sleeping giant. I wanted to turn back then and there, but a part of me felt pulled forward, like I had to uncover the truth. Suddenly, a loud crash resonated from inside the building. We all flinched. It was followed by a low growl that vibrated through the ground beneath us. I raised my weapon, heart racing. "Everyone, stay alert!" I shouted, the command boomeranging in the fog. We stepped cautiously toward the door, which was slightly ajar. I gestured for my men to position themselves at the ready behind me. I pushed the door open slowly. It creaked ominously, revealing a dark hallway that seemed to breathe with the fog. "Spread out," I commanded, my voice low. I could feel my own fear, but I didn't dare show it. We moved deeper into the building, eyes scanning every corner. I felt like a child in a horror movie, knowing something was going to happen. Then, out of nowhere, the lights flickered on, blinding us. I blinked against the brightness and saw a figure standing in the shadows at the far end of the hall. It was tall and gaunt, and I could see its eyes glinting like coal. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice echoing back at us. The figure didn't move, just stared. That's when I felt an electric surge of dread washing over me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was paralyzed. We all were. Then everything went dark. I woke up on the floor, my head spinning. The air was cool against my skin. It took me a moment to gather my thoughts, and when I did, I realized I wasn't alone. My squad was around me, some still dazed, others already on their feet. "Lieutenant?" Private Fisher asked weakly, a tremor in his voice. "Everyone okay?" I pushed myself up, heart racing, scanning the hallway. The figure was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Corporal Simmons rubbed his temple. "What just happened? Did we black out?" "I have no idea." I stood up slowly, keeping my guard up. "We need to keep moving." No one argued. We formed a tighter formation this time, stepping cautiously down the hallway, weapons ready. I glanced toward the door we had entered, but it was just as ominous as before, an uncanny reminder of what had just occurred. As we moved deeper into the building, I noticed something strange. The walls were plastered with peeling yellowed paper, remnants of old posters that spoke of safety and camaraderie. The slogans felt out of place now, as if mocking our current situation. "Secure your perimeter," one read, and the irony made my stomach twist. "Lieutenant, do you smell that?" Simmons whispered, inhaling deeply. I could. It was a sickly sweet odor. I pressed on, but the feeling of dread was growing. I looked at Fisher when I noticed something on the ground, a dark stain, thick and ominous like spilled ink. "What the hell is that?" I muttered, stepping closer to inspect it. I wanted desperately to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, a shadow playing games, but I knew it wasn't. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the back of the corridor, a gut-wrenching groan, almost human. My blood ran cold. I hadn't heard anything like it before, but I felt it in my bones, something primal that screamed for survival. "Back," I ordered sharply. "Everyone back." But it was too late. The lights flickered off again, plunging us into darkness. I struggled to catch my breath, panic bubbling inside me. I raised my weapon high, but the blackness messed with my depth perception. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice strained. I couldn't tell if it was my own fear talking or if something was actually moving in the shadows. "Lieutenant!" Simmons shouted. I heard him, but fear clenched my throat. He was too far. Then, with a shattering crash, something slammed against the wall behind me. I whirled around, heart pounding, ready to confront whatever was lurking. That's when I saw it. I breathed. The figure, the same gaunt shape from before, moved closer. Its eyes burned with an unnatural light. "Run!" I yelled, and we stumbled backward toward the doorway we had entered. The panic surged through us as the figure advanced, its form shifting like smoke, and it wasn't he alone that we barreled out into the open air, gasping, scrambling for safety as the fog closed in around us again, the ominous shroud of mystery thickening. I knew in that moment that whatever was in there had followed us into the mist, that I had no answers, but one thought haunted me as we fled: what if it wanted us to come back? I stumbled into the fog, my breath visible in the chilly air. Panic had taken hold, driving us forward, but now there was a new sense of urgency. The distant sounds from the building echoed in my ears, accompanied by the thudding of our own footsteps on the hard ground. "Where do we go?" Fisher gasped, glancing back nervously. "Just keep moving," I shouted, trying to mask my uncertainty. The dense mist swirled around us like a living thing. We reached a parking lot, the faded lines barely visible. The vehicles stood like sentinels, rusting reminders of a past we didn't quite understand. I felt drawn to one of the abandoned trucks, its paint chipped but the door slightly ajar. "Lieutenant, what are you doing?" Simmons asked, his voice laced with a mix of fear and confusion. "I want to see if we can find something useful," I replied, praying it wasn't a mistake. I stepped cautiously to the truck, scanning the interior. Just empty fast food wrappers and dust, but at least it wasn't a graveyard. I turned back to my squad. "We need to regroup. Check these vehicles for gear." As they fanned out, I noticed something odd. A faint glow appeared from one corner of the lot. I started toward it, drawn by a strange impulse. "Guys, over here," I called softly, hoping to keep our movements quiet. When I reached the source of the light, a small handheld device flickered in the dirt. Its screen displayed a simple logo, a stylized eye. "What is this?" I muttered. I picked it up, feeling its warmth pulse against my fingers. Fisher appeared next to me. "Looks like some kind of surveillance tech," he said, squinting at the screen. "You think it recorded what happened back there?" "That would explain the figure," I murmured, my heart quickening at the thought. "We need to find out." Suddenly, the temperature dropped. A shiver ran down my spine, and the air thickened. "Do you feel that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Before anyone could answer, a low growl emerged from the fog, echoing like thunder. My pulse raced as I turned to face the darkness creeping closer. The creature was back, its presence felt more than seen, a heavy weight bearing down on us. "Get to the trucks," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through me. The squad scrambled to obey, but I hesitated, clutching the device. "We can use this." "Lieutenant, we have to go," Simmons yelled, panic lifting his voice. That I wanted to argue, to figure out the device, but the growl rumbled again, more menacing now. I made a split-second decision. "Fine. Let us move." I tossed the device into my pocket. As we raced toward the nearest truck, the fog thickened. It clung to me like a cloying shroud, weighing down my breath. I glanced back just in time to see a dark shape break through the mist, moving faster than I could comprehend. "Get in!" I shouted, throwing open a door. We tumbled inside, slamming it shut just as I heard the heavy thud against the metal. "We can't stay here," Simmons gasped. I looked out the window, heart pounding. The figure stood mere feet away, its eyes glowing brightly, piercing through the fog. And then it smiled. An uncanny grin that sent chills racing down my spine. "No more running," I muttered, gripping the steering wheel. "We face this thing." The air around us crackled with tension, and I realized we had stumbled into a trap far worse than I had ever envisioned. Whatever was after us craved confrontation, and we were about to find out why. I held my breath as I stared at the creature outside. It still stood there, watching us with those two bright eyes. A wave of dread washed over me, but I couldn't let it show. My squad needed me steady. "Lieutenant, what's the plan?" Fisher asked, his voice full of unsteady hope. That I had no answer. The growl faded, but the weight of its presence lingered in the air. I could almost feel it inching closer, testing our resolve. "We're not going to panic," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. We sit tight for now and see what it does. Suddenly, the creature vanished into the fog. I blinked, trying to adjust my focus. Had it really gone? My gut told me it was still there, lurking just beyond our sight. The fog swirled outside, thick like molasses. Simmons shifted nervously in his seat. This isn't good. We can't just wait here. What if it comes back? As if in response, a sharp crack echoed from outside. I jumped, and the crunch of footsteps on gravel drew closer. I peered through the windshield, heart racing. The mist seemed alive, shifting and curling in ways that felt deliberate. "Everyone stay quiet," I whispered. I focused on the sound, straining to hear over the pounding of my pulse. Something was moving, but it wasn't alone. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught another flicker of light. "What is that?" I asked, trying to make out what was happening. The handheld device in my pocket felt heated against my skin. It was as if it sensed the danger too. "Lieutenant?" Fisher's voice broke through my thoughts. He was eyeing my pocket, his face pale. "What if it's more of those things? Maybe we shouldn't have picked it up." I opened my mouth to respond but got cut off. The creature reappeared, this time much closer, its body barely visible through the fog. With a quick turn, it lunged toward a nearby car. The impact shook the ground, metal crunching under its weight. "Get down!" I yelled, and we all ducked instinctively. The sound of glass shattering echoed through the parking lot. I couldn't just sit here. "We need to act," I said, feeling a desperate pulse of bravery. It was now or never. "Simmons, you take the driver's seat. Fisher, get in the back and keep an eye out. I'll handle the front." "What are you planning?" Simmons asked hesitantly. "If it tries to break in, we'll have to drive out of here fast." The fog felt heavy on my shoulders, but I threw open the door and bolted out, the chills cascading down my spine. The moment I stepped into the open, the fog enveloped me, and the world felt different. I could sense it, the creature watching, waiting. With newfound resolve, I pushed forward, adrenaline coursing through me. The glow of its eyes remained fixed on me, hungry and predatory. Then everything changed. I caught a glimpse of a figure in the fog, moving toward me, beckoning in an unsettling way. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I was too deep now. I felt the device vibrating in my pocket. I could worry about the why later. I needed to confront it head-on. "What do you want?" I called out into the murky abyss. The fog shifted, and I braced myself, preparing for whatever came next. But just as my heart picked up speed, I saw it, the thing that hovered just beyond recognition. It was no longer just a creature, it was a shadow of someone I knew. That revelation hit me like a sledgehammer. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, the words barely escaping my mouth. And the answer, whatever it was, felt just out of reach. The fog thickened around me, swallowing my words before they could reach whoever or whatever was out there. My breath came in quick bursts, the chill seeping through my uniform. I didn't want to show fear, but I felt it tightening around me like a noose. The shadow wavered, flickering like a flame about to be extinguished. "You left me," it whispered, echoing through the mist. My heart sank. It sounded like Jess. The thought sent ice coursing through my veins. "Jess?" I choked out, trying to steady my voice. "Is that you?" "I'm here," it replied, but there was something off about it. The voice twisted, a blend of familiarity and something profoundly alien. I took a step back, heart pounding louder than the growl we had heard before. "Stay away." My shout pierced the gloom, but I felt powerless. I wanted to reach out, yet every instinct told me to run. The memories flooded in her laughter, her endless determination replaced now with an embodiment of despair. Just as I thought I could reach for the light, the figure jerked unnaturally, twisting into grotesque shapes. I could see outlines of other creatures forming in the background, shadows mimicking Jess's movements. They were all around me now, creeping through the fog like dark tendrils reaching out. "Lieutenant." Fisher's voice crackled over the radio. "What's happening out there? We need shut it off." I hissed, realizing the noise might attract them. But the urge to run was overwhelming. I turned to head back toward the car when a chilling laugh erupted, echoing around me. "I never left." "You forgot," the figure taunted, its shape distorting again. The realization washed over me like acid. The creature thrived on my guilt, on my memories of loss that I glanced back at Simmons and Fisher, their eyes wide with fear, their stares pleading for answers I didn't have. We were more trapped than I thought. I didn't know how to fight this. "We have to go," I shouted, breaking into a sprint back towards the car, gripping the device in my pocket tighter. Whatever it was, it might hold the key that I reached the vehicle first, flinging the door open and hopping inside. Simmons and Fisher were right behind me, confusion splashed across their faces. "What was it?" Simmons asked, his voice quaking. "The fog. It's using our memories against us." I slapped the device against my palm, feeling the heat increase. "Whatever this is, it can manipulate reality. We need to get out of here before it figures out how to use us." The engine roared to life as Simmons fumbled with the keys, panic barely behind his eyes. I looked back, the shapes in the fog closing in, swirling in a desperate dance. "Step on it." We lurched forward, the tires screeching as we broke through the mist. But not before I caught one last glimpse of the shadow, the twisted form of Jess, reaching out toward me. And just like that, the fog began to clear, but I felt no relief. There was a moment of silence, an eerie calm. But I knew it wasn't over. The device still hummed softly, a reminder of the danger that lay ahead. That's when I saw it, a flash in the rearview mirror. The shadows were gathering again, readying for another assault. I clenched my fists, dread rising in my throat. Whatever this thing was, it had more tricks up its sleeve. And we were far from safe. I gripped the edge of my seat as the car surged forward, the headlights slicing through the lingering fog. Simmons's hands shook slightly on the wheel, and I could see Fisher's reflection in the rearview mirror, his eyes wide with fear. We had escaped the immediate threat, but the shadows were still hunting us. "Did you see it?" Fisher asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Did you really see Jess?" I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment. "It wasn't her," I replied, trying to convince myself. "It was something else, something feeding off my memories." Simmons took a sharp turn, the tires skidding slightly over the gravel. "What do you mean? How can we fight something like that?" A knot twisted in my stomach. "I don't know. But I have this," I said, pulling out the device. It felt hotter than before, vibrating slightly in my palm. "Maybe it can help us. We need to figure out what it does." "Help us how?" Fisher pressed. "It's just a piece of equipment." "I don't think so. It's more than that." I held it up, studying the flickering lights across its surface. It reacted to the fog. There has to be a way to use it against whatever's out there. A sudden chill wrapped around us, and I shivered. "Look." I pointed to the dark shape gathering in the rearview mirror. "It's coming. Step on it." Simmons shouted, his voice strained as adrenaline surged. The engine roared to life again, and we sped down the winding road. I turned around in my seat, trying to catch a glimpse of the shadow. It was still there, morphing in and out of sight. It was impossible to tell how many of them there were, but their presence leached warmth from the air. "That's it." I blurted out, an idea sparking in my mind. "The device, it needs to be activated in the fog. Maybe that's what it's designed for." "Are you joking? We just escaped," Fisher exclaimed, panic rising in his voice. "We can't keep running. It will just keep coming," I argued, my heart racing. "We need to lure it in and use the device." Simmons cast a wary glance at me. You think that's a smart move? No, but it's our best shot. I took a deep breath. We can't let it feed on us anymore. He nodded slowly, and I could see the determination settle in his eyes. All right. But if we do this, we do it fast. I directed Simmons to a clearing just ahead. It was dimly lit, but it would give us space to maneuver. We'll stop here, I said as we skidded to a halt. On my mark, we'll activate the device and draw it in. The air felt heavy, anticipation coiling around us like a tightening noose. I grabbed the device, its heat radiating against my skin. It felt almost alive. Ready? Fisher nodded reluctantly, fear still etched on his face. Here goes nothing, I murmured. I pressed the activation button, and a wave of light pulsed outward, illuminating the clearing. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the fog began to churn, the shadows coalescing into a darker mass. A low growl echoed through the stillness, vibrating against my ribs. My stomach dropped. This is it, I breathed. But as I watched the shadows twist and move closer, a new dread filled me. I suddenly realized that we weren't just hunting the darkness was hunting us. The shadows lunged at us, their forms twisting and melding like smoke. I felt the chill deepen, a bone-deep cold that gnawed at my resolve. My heart raced as I tried to focus on the device in my hands. Now. Activate it again. Simmons shouted, his voice cracking under pressure. I pressed the button, the light flaring to life once more. Instantly, the fog illuminated, pushing back the darkness for just a heartbeat. It wasn't enough. The shadows surged closer, growls morphing into something like whispers, as if they were drawing strength from our fear. I could barely hear Simmons over the rushing pulse of my blood in my ears. What is it saying? I don't know. I yelled back. But we have to hold them back. The light from the device flickered erratically, and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. It's dying. I realized, panic threading through my thoughts. What do we do? Fisher was fumbling with his seatbelt. We can't just sit here. The figures slithered closer, the air thick with tension. I glanced at Simmons, whose face was taut with concentration. We need to make it know we're not afraid. I said, even as my stomach twisted with doubt. Are you insane? Fisher spat, eyes wide. We have to try something. I protested. With a deep breath, I shouted into the dark, get away from us. We know what you are. The shadows seemed to pause, as if considering my words. A low growl rumbled among them, and they shifted back, just for a moment. But then a new shadow emerged, larger and more defined than the rest. It had a form, a face like something out of my nightmares, and it locked onto me with eyes that burned with inky darkness. Quick! Use the device. Simmons urged, pushing me toward it. I raised the device, steadying my trembling hand. What do you want? I yelled, trying to pour every ounce of defiance into my voice. But the creature drew closer, indifferent to my challenge. Something clicked in my mind, a memory of Jess's laughter, her warmth. You can't take her. I shouted, the words bursting from my lips. For a moment, the entity flickered, as if flickering between realities. The growl turned to a hiss, and the others began to ripple around it. A sudden, sharp crack filled the air, the device surged with energy. I felt it pulse through me, the heat igniting from my fingertips to my core. Hold on. I shouted as I pressed down harder on the button. The ground beneath us began to shake, the fog swirling violently. The shadows wailed, their voices blending into an eerie choir that threatened to overtake our senses. Then everything went dark. For a split second, I was enveloped in a deafening silence, my breath frozen in my throat. I couldn't tell if we were still in the clearing or somewhere else entirely. I squinted, but all I could see was nothingness. The fog gone, the shadows seemingly vanished. Are we alive? Fisher's voice echoed, shaky and uncertain. I don't know, I replied, my heart pounding. But we're not out of the woods yet. That's when I noticed a figure standing just outside the edge of the clearing. Someone was out there, watching us. The figure moved slowly, the contours barely visible in the dim light. It was human, or at least, it looked that way. My instincts screamed at me to stay put, but curiosity tugged at me to see more. "Who is there?" I called into the thickening gloom. My voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in. Every horror I'd just endured fluttered in my mind like a swarm of angry bees. At first, there was no response. I strained my ears, but all I could hear was the ragged breaths of my companions. Fisher's fingers found mine in the dark, squeezing tightly. "What if it's one of them?" he whispered, fear lacing his tone. That I shook my head, trying to push aside those thoughts. "It looks human," I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. "Maybe they can help us." Just then, the figure stepped closer, emerging from the thick fog with a sort of ethereal glow. My heart raced. I tried to convince myself this was good, that it might mean safety. But everything in me told me to be cautious. "Who are you?" Simmons asked, his voice steadier than mine. The figure paused. Slowly, it raised a hand to its face, as if wiping away a veil of shadows that clung to it. That's when I saw the eyes, a reflection of despair and something darker. There was no light behind them, just an endless void. "I'm not here to harm you," the figure finally said, its voice echoing like a distant memory. "I'm searching for answers." Answers? In the wraps of darkness, I didn't know whether that meant safety or yet another threat. "Who are you?" I pressed again, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. "People call me Ezra," it proclaimed with a confidence that felt strangely misplaced in this murky realm. "But that doesn't matter. You need to leave this place." "Leave? Why?" Fisher asked, eyes darting around, his pulse quickening. Ezra looked past us, a flicker of fear momentarily crossing its face. "It's coming," it said, voice laced with urgency. "And it feeds on your fear. You have to go before it finds you again." "What are you talking about?" I asked, frustration mixing with fear. "What's coming?" The shifting darkness seemed to coil tighter around us, the air growing heavy. Ezra hesitated, eyes flickering to the shadows that loomed just out of reach. "The Wraith," it replied, barely a whisper. "They took me once. I got away, but not everyone does." Simmons stepped forward, brushing against me, eyes wide with questions. "And what do you know about it? How can we stop it?" Ezra's gaze darkened. "You cannot stop it. You can only run." Before I could respond, the ground trembled again, but this time it felt different, more menacing. In that instant, I realized the fog had begun to crawl back, pulling at our thoughts and casting heavier shadows. "Stay close," I ordered, my voice steadying. I was terrified, yes, but I couldn't let it show. "Wait!" Ezra shouted as we began to move, urgency screeching in its words. "You don't have much time." I glanced back, and that's when I saw a dark silhouette rising behind Ezra, merging seamlessly with the renewed shadows. A chill ran down my spine. We were still not alone, and danger was closing in fast. "Run!" I yelled, my instincts kicking into high gear. We bolted into the trees, heart racing, but one thought lingered: what else was hidden in this suffocating fog? The chaos was a whirlwind of feet pounding against the ground and branches snapping beneath the weight of fear. Simmons, Fisher, and I tore through the trees, the dense fog entangling us like a sinister grip. I barely had time to glance back, but I could feel its presence, that oppressive shadow lurking just beyond the reach of our hurried breaths. The Wraith, whatever that meant, was hunting us, feeding off our dread. "Keep moving!" I shouted, almost too breathless to keep the command steady. My heart threatened to burst from my chest, and each inhale felt more desperate than the last. The trees loomed over us, gnarled branches twisting like long fingers, urging us into the depths of that sinister landscape. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Ezra calling. "Over here." The voice echoed, but it wasn't safe to slow down, not with the darkness pushing in behind us. I hadn't asked for more explanations. I barely understood what we were escaping. After what felt like an eternity of running, we burst into a clearing, the dense fog lifting just enough to reveal a dilapidated building looming in front of us. It was an old watchtower, cracked stone and shattered windows, the perfect mix of refuge and a new horror. "This way," I urged, darting toward the entrance. I wanted to pause, catch my breath, but the thought of being caught out in the open sent a shiver down my spine. Simmons and Fisher shoved through the door. "What if it's hiding in there?" Fisher whispered, fear in his eyes. "What if we lead it right to itself?" "It's a risk we have to take," I replied, issuing a final glance over my shoulder. The fog danced at the edges, but the shadows had yet to reappear yet. "We can't stay out here." We stumbled inside, pushing through debris and remnants of old military equipment. A chill hung in the air, and it almost felt like walking down a grave path. The walls were peppered with old photographs and newspaper clippings, relics of lives once lived. They seemed to watch us, documenting our fear. The shadows around us flickered. No, they didn't just flicker, they writhed. Fear twisted in my gut. My mind overflowed with thoughts of Jess, but I had to stay focused, to keep the pain locked away while we figured this out. "Do you have the device?" I turned to Simmons, my voice laced with urgency. "It's right here," he assured, producing it from his pocket. It pulsed gently, a faint light nearly swallowed by the darkness. "I think it still works." The wraith feeds off fear, I reflected, pacing the worn floorboards. "Maybe we can use that to make it vulnerable. We need to turn this thing against it." "Are you serious?" Fisher asked, eyes wide. "How do we even do that?" I hesitated, piecing together the fragmented ideas swirling in my mind. If this device responds to the fog and the wraith is a manifestation of our fear, what if activating it during an intense moment could force it back? Fisher shook his head. "What if it gets stronger? We could be putting ourselves in worse danger. It's riskier waiting here. It knows we're inside now. We have to take a stand," I insisted, conviction strengthening my voice. The murmurs of fear clawed at the edges of my mind, flashes of Jess teasing me with distant laughter. "If I can call it out." I started, but my thoughts spiraled into painful memories. I couldn't focus on my regret. I had to confront this head-on. "Simmons, can you get it to project light from different angles?" He nodded, determination glimmering in his gaze. "Let us do this." "Wait." Fisher suddenly whispered, eyes fixed just beyond the entrance. "What's that?" The room fell silent, the shadows swirling just inside the edges of the doorway. My pulse quickened as I focused on the darkness closing in around us, the very thing we feared. It was there, an entity lurking, shifting as though it were a part of the fog itself. "Now!" I shouted, desperate to act as the shadows threatened to coalesce. Simmons activated the device, flicking switches, and the machine pulsed. A brilliant light erupted, cutting through the gloom and momentarily illuminating the room. "Don't let it disrupt your focus," I yelled, feeling the weight of its gaze. For a heartbeat, everything seemed suspended in that burst of light. The wraith halted, momentarily trapped in the brilliance of the device's glow. It twisted like smoke, yet its form struggled against the intensity. But it was only an instant before the darkness surged anew, pressing closer, this time relentless. The light flickered, another wave of dread drowned me as I felt every shadow clawing at my mind again, unleashing a torrent of memories. I could hear Jess's voice rising through the chaos, echoes of the past colliding with the looming threat of what stood before us. "I didn't leave you." I screamed into the void, my voice lending energy to the device. The wraith faltered, shifting again, as if desperately trying to escape the truth of what fed it. It distorted, lingering briefly as my words tore through the darkness. You can't take her. I shouted, pouring every ounce of conviction into the words that echoed in the fog, daring it to move closer. I knew I was shouting against the pull of guilt, against the mix of sorrow and anger that threatened to swallow me whole. You don't own me. You can't take her. And just as the shadows lunged, I pressed the device button harder down, forcing the light to pulse again, revealing glimmers of figures that once stood strong against my darkest fears. The wraith let out a wailing hiss, its form rippling and breaking under the intensity of the light. Suddenly, everything changed. It was like a curtain was pulled back, the fog fell away, and clarity rushed in. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my footing, as the dark shape in front of me dissipated into a spiral of smoke and unearthly wails. It was gone. Silence enveloped us, the shadows retreating into the mist, leaving the remnants of the old tower echoing with memories. But in the silence, questions remained. What just happened? Simmons asked, blinking rapidly. I don't know, I admitted, uncertainty flooding back in. The device continued to pulse gently in my palm, but now I saw a new light flickering inside it, a glow that felt almost comforting. But I think we're safe for now. I barely registered the weight of my words. Had we escaped the wraith? Or had it merely retreated, waiting patiently for our fear to resurface? The fog was still thick outside, and in the corners of my mind, the unanswered questions coiled like smoke. I'd never truly know what had haunted us that night or whether it would come back. I stole a final glance at the entrance, heart heavy with the weight of memories, each one flickering softly in the remnants of fear. We need to get out of here, I said softly, looking at my squad. Let us not go back. I moved toward the door, but the echoes of what we had faced shifted in my mind, a haunting reminder of uncertainty. What had we really escaped? As we stepped into the lingering fog, a chill ran down my spine. I might have left the tower, but I couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of it and a piece of that night would follow me no matter how far we ran.